Hello and welcome to our newest community event of Bots and People, together facilitated with Andreas Bürkle and Workato. If you can hear me, then please write into the chat yes, or do a thumbs up. That's also great. Okay, I can see the first confirmations. So cool that you are all here. I see already 16 people live, some more registered. I think they will come in the next minutes. Just a quick introduction on what is the plan today. So I will give a brief introduction. After that, I will hand over to Patrick Held. He's the team lead data and analytics from Andreas Bürkle. Andreas Bürkle is an electronic wholesaler, and they have quite interesting approaches and very good approaches from our point of view of automation. And he has also brought a very, very interesting use case about data lake automation. So you can stay tuned on how this is working. A few words of who is Bots and People, who doesn't know us and doesn't know me. I'm Nico. I'm the founder and CEO of Bots and People. We offer three things to the market. So one is automation services via a marketplace. We also, and this is where we are very much known for, education on process automation, and not only robotic process automation, but also all the other technologies, the methodology behind, and also the automation mindset, which is really important. And the third thing is about community, and that's why we are here today. We want to inspire companies and people in companies on how to build automations and also how to strategically ramp up automation initiatives. So with that, quick intro, I can already hand over to Patrick. And Patrick, kidnap us into the world of automation at Andreas Bürkle. We are very excited.
Okay, thank you, Nico. Just a slight little correction. It's similar. Andreas and Alexander sound similar, but the company actually, it's called Alexander Bürkle. So no worries about that. I will share my screen. Just give me a second on that so that you can see a few slides that I brought. So, okay, you should be able to see a black slide with white text. Nico, you could quickly confirm?
That's working.
Oh, okay, wonderful. All right, so I will tell you a little bit something about our implementation of automation, process automation. We were just talking about it. It depends how you define it. I will give you a short introduction of the company itself, and you'll need that information to understand how the automation came along. And then I will show you some of our approaches, and just dig into that and show you in the end a use case for the data lake automation. So I'll start right away with, in that case, with a quick introduction of Alexander Bürkle. The company itself, it's 120 years old, so a little over that, and we have 800 people aboard, work with around 4 million products, not all active, but lots of them, and revenue is increasing, especially last year. People were busy, and the company itself is structured in three parts. So we have a smart building area, which is the classical electric parts, cables, plugs, all kinds of electric stuff that the electricians need to implement and build into the houses. Also, we have a smart industries area where we are heading towards industrial IoT, for example. It's rather a service provider area where we still use the wholesaler part of the company to sell the parts, but also deliver services with that. And the third, the latest, the smallest part is dealing with consumer products. So it's a fridge, or it's a TV, or it's a radio, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, altogether, this is in fact what we did. And I joined this company 4 years ago after dealing with data for over 13 years, and also have experience in CRM and ERP databases and all that. But when I came here, it's the company had a vision. So the vision was to come from that traditional business, basically, and try to digitize a bunch of stuff. So in the end, we wanted from the fragmented company and to build basically a networking company, so that the cloud is being used for its benefits, and kind of get away from the on-premise approach. So with all that, we hired experts to build a marketing strategy, to create new brands, and this is basically things like that happened. So we built a container village with meeting rooms in there as kind of a brand shift, basically, and to communicate the new brand. Because as you saw before, the logo was orange, and now it's all in red. And yeah, this is a bunch of stuff that happened there. And also, it was they started creating a startup in the company. So this is basically where the digitalization comes from. The startup had a goal and wanted to, just get from the traditional way more into the latest, using the latest technologies, and just getting more modern, and try also to create new business cases with digital models. So to achieve all this, the mission was basically to migrate or merge from a rather on-premise environment with still already automations built in, but more towards the networking company, and having a bunch of different use cases built in, and also the increasing amount of tools that came in there. So the mission was basically to be flexible enough to build new use cases in a fairly short amount of time. And as you can see, the networking company brings a little bit something with it. So it's the vision is to actually have a digitized company, and be in the cloud present, and have new use cases built in. This picture is actually pretty much a current state, but the vision is even broader. So we're not yet done, but the mission is on its way, and I think we're pretty good settled. So now, how comes automation in that context? Let's just, what does it mean for us? I mean, we had a bunch of legacy systems. Probably lots of companies do have that as well. Except startup companies, they start with cloud applications probably right away. But we had a bunch of legacy systems, and needed to renew stuff and innovate stuff. And yeah, so otherwise things wouldn't change. And automation is part of it. So that means going into the cloud, we have to interact with a bunch of different tools, and it's necessary to automate things, because we have to communicate between on-premise and cloud, and cloud to cloud, and all that stuff. So we need to build interfaces there, and they mostly have to be automated. So this is kind of a automation that is necessary to make communication able between systems. So what are reasons for the automations that we have? There are, to give you an example, there are people that work with Excel. They have a Excel sheet and they start putting data in there. So once they work with the data, they figure out that it's not enough data. So they get more data. And then they start connecting the Excel sheets and send it to someone who adds some data or changes data, and then add a new Excel sheet. And what happens is that all of a sudden you have a huge process built in Excel yourself that, in this case, a person spent like 30 days a year just to maintain this Excel sheet and to refresh the data inside there. So that's not the actual purpose of a person that is working in our company to, work with Excel sheets, because that's something that can be automated. And this is also a reason for automation. So we are actively looking into the company and try to optimize processes or figure out where people are manually working or creating things that can be easily automated. And that Excel example is a very good example for that, I think. So we don't really automate because we love to play with technology. I mean, technology is fun and new stuff, and playing around with all that stuff is cool, but this is not really the reason why we're automating. It's a utility, and there are a bunch of utilities, and you have lots of tools already in the company, and other tools like, for example, Salesforce brings some automation capabilities with it, but it's just a utility. So it's not, we're not automating because of the technology. I experienced that bigger companies are, talking about bigger companies, like a couple thousand employees, they have departments, CTO offices or something that play around with technology, but they miss the business case. So that's why I'm saying that technology is not really the driver for automation. And plus, in this modern world with cloud applications and businesses changing, you have to keep track with all that stuff. So if you are occupied with your manual processes and waste time with that, the business keeps continuing and moving into another direction, and you just have to keep track with that. And therefore, the more you automate, the less you have to worry about maintaining all your technology and infrastructure, but you are able to keep up with the speed of the business. So this is also a reason for automation. And if you do it right, then you reduce the amount of errors. You get a rather stable process, and since it's developed once and it runs every day or every week or whatever, it makes it pretty stable. And it's, people do not make mistakes in manual as they do in manual steps. So that's, a governed process in that way, because it's the technology takes it over, it's put in there, and then it runs. Okay, now how do we go towards the automation approach? We actually have two ways of getting closer to the automation, and one is the business approach, which is, from my perspective, the most important one, because we're not doing automation for fun. We have a reason why we do it, and that's the business. So, and also in the business approach, we have two different approaches. One is, if people come up to us and have an idea or a requirement, and ask us to implement something or to automate something. Then they have a pretty good idea or a requirement. We check it, see if it works, if it makes sense what the people are thinking about. Maybe we add some things and just get into discussion and see if things are working well the way we think it should work, in a rather automated way, and bring in our ideas and thoughts, because people might not know what is possible in automation. So therefore, we get into discussion there. Once we agreed on a certain approach, then we just start planning the implementation and implement it in the end. And the other way is that people don't really have an idea of what could be automated, and that's the Excel example. People work with that, and they're kind of afraid that people take away their work, and they put a lot of effort in there. So you really have to be careful by talking to the people. But we actually actively go to the people and try to figure out what their pain is, how they work, and try to identify where automation could be implemented. So as I said, once you start talking about automation, then people think, ooh, they're going to take away my work. And what am I going to do then? But this is the wrong thought, because they actually have work to do. And they should focus on that and not on creating Excel sheets. So there's lots of discussion, and you really have to be sensitive about things like that. Eventually, when they figure out that it makes sense and that they have more time in the end when things are automated, then you get more into the discussion and discuss the potential solutions. And if they agree, then you just go ahead and implement it. So yeah, that's our business approach, a two-way approach. And for the technology, there's another approach that we go. So I became a friend of low code, even though I coded before, not in low code. But the thing is, there are a few reasons why I favor low code, because it's I don't really have to worry about creating the infrastructure myself and take care about Azure Cloud or AWS Cloud or Google Cloud or whatever, because there's a big part of maintenance that comes with it. And I just want to, implement something and build business value. So therefore, it has to be a fast development, which, well, low code in most of the cases supports. You get to the point where you think, there are complex problems that you have to solve, and but there are also solutions that you can implement with low code, because at some point, most of the low code environments, they have a possibility to code a little bit inside. So this is for the complex problems, basically, but yeah, it doesn't happen too much. It's pretty easy to implement once you're familiar with the environment. And another thing is, if you want to grow and the market with qualified people in the information system or developers, it's kind of hard to find people there. And so the idea is basically to use low code and find people in the company that are likely to play around with technology, but not code. And therefore, low code is pretty good, because they can start off by themselves and start playing around, and it's not too complex. They don't have to know how to code exactly, but they know what they want to do, and therefore it's pretty good. So it's another reason why actually we go for low code versus coding yourself. You actually have more control over all the things you do. But the low code frameworks, they're pretty advanced, I would say. Depends what you use. And they're a bunch of more reasons why you should code yourself, or maybe it's a philosophy question. But for our approach, it was actually the low-code part that we followed. Okay, so to get a bit closer to how we automate it, I'd like to show you a little bit something about our environment. So this is a nice and neat and clean picture of the stuff that we already implemented. And if you take a look at this Commerce Tools button there, this is just one little button, and it's a clean picture. And what happens if I go to the Commerce Tools environment, there would be something like this. So I just wanted to keep it nice and clean and not overwhelm you with a bunch of icons there. So this is basically a very high-level picture of how we implemented everything. There are the two main pipelines, I would say, that I would like to focus on. So the first one is connecting the ERP system to the CRM system, and there comes the startup company in place, because with the startup department inside the company that we built 2017, we also started implementing a CRM system. And so the implementation, or the connection between the ERP system and the CRM system is a pretty big part of it, because there are processes, and there are round trips, there are one-way trips, but there are processes that are coming from one end to the other and going back the other way. And this is something that our service provider was not really putting very much focus on, but it's very, very important. And if you have the requirement that you have an ERP that needs to communicate with the CRM, there's no other way around that. So this is, yeah, I would say one of the two big pipelines. And the other one is the integration platform, which is, we actually used Workato for that as an automation integration tool. And Snowflake as basically our data platform, and all the lines that are drawn that go into Workato go also to Snowflake. So you cannot really say how many, out of this picture, you cannot really judge how many, how much information goes into Snowflake, because it goes mostly over Workato, which is our central data hub, basically, to communicate and then have our process automations and expose data with APIs and all that stuff. So this is also the use case that I would like to show you a little bit later on. And okay, then to get a little bit an idea of what we're talking about, and that you have a sense of how much information is flowing, keep in mind we're a fairly small company. I mean, 800 people, yes, but this is a picture that arose in the past 3 years, basically. So we're pretty good on track, but there's some more stuff to go. The Salesforce integration part, we have, just roughly 72,000 records a day that are moved between the systems, between the ERP and the Salesforce system. And we use 28 jobs for that. So it's not really a lot, but it's actually the stuff that is necessary for the daily work. And as I told you, only 3 years, so there's much more to come, and this is increasing. And the Snowflake data pipeline actually consists of 54 jobs, and we're moving 4.2 million records a day, which is also not really big data, but it's also increasing, and it's necessary to have that in a data lake, because at a certain point in the ERP system, it doesn't make sense to select over millions and millions of records, and therefore you need a strong data platform. All right, so let me share some learning from our project that happened there in terms of automation. So you probably know that legacy systems, you have a legacy system and you build processes in there, and you're comfortable with that. Every process is okay. You build it in there, but it starts growing. And as we say, sometimes you get to a point where you say, oh, it's historically grown, and we have to find a workaround to implement the business process. So what in the end, you build a monolith. And actually, you should try to get away from that. But the thing is, people tend to stay in their application where they're familiar and implement more and more stuff in there, even though it would make sense to use another application to build the processes in there. So the difficulty is to bridge the two things, because the business might say, hey, I need application B, and I need to hook it up to the application A. And then you get to the problem because the people say, oh, well, I can implement it in my application A. And this is kind of a difficult thing because that's not progressing. And with the use of cloud applications, it gets more and more difficult because you have to actually break that monolith into parts and focus on the main tasks that the systems are doing. So basically, as we did with the CRM system, we have a cloud CRM system, and we're trying to take out all the customer-related parts from the ERP system that are better in Salesforce, and where we're more flexible to focus on the customer there and build new business models in Salesforce itself. So therefore, you have the process enabler, and the process enabler is basically the person who automates processes or who implements the processes, and there you have a important role. You don't have to underestimate it, because you have to build the bridge between the two parties actually that want to work together, but if one is not willing to work with the other, then you really have to start working on that before you actually start creating the business case. So what happened in our case, and this is a learning from our side, we built processes in Salesforce. So we have a lead process, and out of the lead, you create an account, and that account eventually has a subscription. And so you built the requirements there, and oops, someone forgot to talk with other people. And all of a sudden, you figure out that, the subscription process should have been actually in the ERP system, because there are some processes and flows that are better in the ERP system. So this is what I meant with focusing on your application. So try to communicate with other people that are responsible for other applications to build the process. And if you have a process, you also have the automation with it. But you have to make sure that you find the right place for your business value, because otherwise you do the task twice. And this is basically what happened in our case. So it's a little example for a fuck-up night, basically. But here, I just wanted to share it to you because communication and having different application worlds and people that are not aware of building the bridge, people are the faults arise out of that, and this is what you have to keep in mind in that case. So long speech about that. Now I'd like to get a little bit more into that data lake use case. And if you hear data lake and you think, well, 4.2 million records a day is not really a data lake. Well, depends how you define a data lake. I just don't want to get into that discussion. I just call it whatever you like. We built a kind of a warehouse. We built an analytic platform out of it. We have a data lake actually where we store files in that system. So it's just, whatever you name it, it's fine. And in our case, we start on the left-hand side. It looks pretty easy, but keep in mind we have cloud applications and we have on-premise applications. And if you're coding yourself, then all of a sudden, if you have to bridge a cloud system with a on-premise system, then you have to deal with a lot of network security and firewall and IP whitelisting and all that kind of stuff, which in our case, the low-code part took care of that in a fairly easy way. And so we just, I just took the two use cases that I showed you before there, the Salesforce implementation and the Snowflake implementation, because those are the main use cases that we have. And they flow, the information from the left side flows, for example, the ERP system information flows into Salesforce as well as Snowflake, but it's not the same information necessarily, because we deliberately put less information into Salesforce, but want to have all the information in Snowflake. So we have different integration parts there. So to bridge the gap between on-premise and the cloud, it's kind of a technical thing, but I'll get to the point. It's part of the automation, in fact, as well, because I have to access the ERP system, in our case, an Oracle database, and I have to cross the firewall in any way. And in our case, we have a piece of software that is installed on the virtual machine, and that is actually bridging the cloud application with our on-premise application. So the integration platform is connecting through a secure pipeline to the VM. We have a firewall with specific rules for that, and then we get through to the information in our actually network. So then we can create connections to whatever system we want, either the ERP system or any other file system, FTP system, whatever is in our network. And this goes over the on-premise. So this is the first bridge that you have to take, because the cloud-to-cloud implementation is pretty easy. You just connect them together. So that was the first thing that we have to take care of. And this is a little bit of a broader picture to give you an idea of what we did and how we automated the complete process. So starting again at the source on the left side, in that case, Salesforce is a source as well as a target. And we get all the information and move it on either to Salesforce or to Snowflake. And in our case, we didn't really have the need to have a real-time data movement towards Snowflake, because on a daily basis, it was by far enough. But we still had the capabilities to go down to micro-batching or even real-time, depending on the use case. So you always have to check the use case, but for our needs, for now, it's enough to do it that way. The Salesforce integration, though, the smallest micro batch is, I think, a minute or 2 minutes, where data is moving. And there's also partly real-time integration. So that means whenever Salesforce is changing something, it sends an outbound message and moves the data right over to where it needs to go. So the Snowflake is actually the use case. And what we tried to reach was having a central data store where we have all or a lot of information in that system, where we're fast and flexible enough to analyze, to provide to other systems. In our case, back there, if you see back there, we have the Salesforce Tableau CRM system that we connected to Snowflake. We also have an API approach where we say, if you need any aggregated KPIs, for example, then you go and get them whenever you want to, and we just provide you the API therefore. And in the middle, this whole part, the processing and the staging, and this is done, and I get a little deeper into there because this is also an automation approach. I mean, the integration itself is an automation at some point where you say, okay, I don't want to worry about data movements. We implement it and it runs, and we have a monitoring system built on top of it, and everything's fine. We get informed whenever there's something going wrong. But in Snowflake, we built actually our own automation framework, which is, you know, in the beginning, you get files or you get data right into tables. So this is why we have two approaches here with the staging tables and the staging files. And we move the data in there. Then we have the processing part, and the processing part is basically that raw data needs to be, in our case, beautified, let me put it that way. So cleaned a little bit and put into a structure that we could use, because we use any kind of data, be it JSON out of a staging file, be it CSV or XML or whatsoever. But there are also cases when in the staging table, you already have the structure and can put the data right into the table. So that's why we have those two approaches. But from the staging area, we need to historize also the information and clean it and transform it. And this is what's happening automatically inside of Snowflake. And I'll walk you a little bit through the process, how we built that stuff. So you need a table no matter what. So now let me start in another way. You have the easiest thing is you load a file into the database or into Snowflake, into the data platform. The structure doesn't really matter for the beginning. You can just dump your files however often you want, and there it is. But at the point where you need the data, you need to structure it. So eventually you have to check the structure, build a table to use the information out of the file. And for that, you build initially one table. This is the staging table as well. So in case the file is increasing in terms of information and there's more information coming, you just add the files, the new information as columns to the table. So you extend the table whenever there is new information. So this is the only task that you have to do to assure that this automation process is running. So once you have that added column in that table, you go ahead and run a job that we built ourselves that is checking inside all of the related tables if there are fields already existing or if they're missing. So then the job automatically adds or synchronizes actually the structure of the staging table towards all the relevant and following tables inside Snowflake. So this is actually the first step of the automation to assure that we have the right data structure. The next step would be then the program that is moving the data itself needs to be adjusted towards the new structure in case there is a new structure. So let's assume we added a couple of fields and the first program was synchronizing all the other tables. Then my existing program would not work with that new structure. So therefore, I have to regenerate the processing program according to the new fields. And that is the new program is automatically grabbing the new fields and moving them through the complete database, doing a history and a normalization and whatever is needed to have it in a structured and usable way inside of the data platform. So once you generated that program, obviously you need to run it. So this is actually the automation inside of Snowflake, and how would that look like to get a bit of a better idea rather than having 3 red bubbles with text and stuff. The picture that we had before, this is our environment. And first step would be to put the files into the staging area. So in our case with Workato, this is that's lowcode, and it's fairly easy. I export the information from the source system. This is actually generating a file at a specific URL that I defined up there. And this job here is taking the file and moving it into the Snowflake staging area. So then it sits there. I prepare the, this is just a maintenance task, which is not really relevant. Next thing would be then have the staging table from which, or the files that I put there need to be put into the staging table so that I can start processing and querying on the table. And in the end, I just need to clean that staging table so that I'm ready for moving the data in there. So this is done in here. It's being cleaned, and also the data is being copied from the staging file into the staging table. And then the big magic is happening, all the processing that's taking place. And there you see the 3 bubbles there. And this is equivalent to the red 3 bubbles that I showed you just before. Checking the table structure and adding fields if necessary, generating the program and running the program. And in the end, you have nice and clean data in your system. And whenever there's something going wrong, I have a notification job running that is checking if this job had any error, and then it informs me if there's anything that went wrong or not. Mostly it's okay, but once in a while there is something happening, some hiccups, but yeah, this is what the notification is for. And there on the right side, you see actually how that thing that is the step 13 here, that's the whole thing that I'm doing. I'm calling a procedure inside of Snowflake, and this is doing all the magic for me. So this is a quick run through our automation process, and there are some other considerations that we were also worrying about or thinking about. And yeah, in terms of governance, you just have to make sure that there's a proper error handling. And the notification that is informing you whenever there's something in an error table, or you have a direct mail that is sending you the errors, but then you have to be careful. If you have tons of errors in the beginning of the development that happen, then you spam yourself with notifications. But once that is running smooth, I think it's pretty good. But you have to really make sure that the error handling is done very well. And about scaling, that's what I meant before. I'm not really worrying about things like that, because Snowflake is basically scaling automatically. I can say I need more power or less power, and Snowflake just starts and stops machines that I would need or not need. Same thing with Workato. There's yeah, I just don't have any worries with infrastructure, with performance issues. But the prerequisite is that I build the jobs well. So that means I cannot create anything and expect that the performance is doing well. I have to think a little bit about the whole thing, and then things are working very well. And yeah, we have the nice feature of an API management in our integration platform or automation platform. And this is a very nice feature that relieves also a bunch of infrastructure, and you can build really, really fast APIs. And my suggestion is use them wherever you can. to automate things and to decouple as well. And then people can use whenever they want, whatever they want, as long as you have the API exposed to that. So automation is actually becoming quite natural for us. And the cool thing is just to see that this infrastructure that is built in that case is just, yeah, it established basically a central data platform, and people are coming up to us and asking us for advice, for information when they want to create a new business model. So that is a really, really cool thing, because it's you cannot really take it for granted. It's hard work, and you have to have a good quality, and then things come by itself. So if you have a good process established, lots of automation, and then you have the time for new things, and then you have a really great infrastructure that works the way you want. Of course, with this infrastructure, there are some challenges that I would like to point out as well. There are people that do not really know how and what they can automate. So you have to get in contact with them and show and make marketing for the automation as well inside of your company. And we mostly automate it inside of our company. Another difficulty is also the unawareness of who's responsible for the data. Because you have several systems. One says, well, this is customer data. This is not my responsibility, but it's used in the other system as well. So this is also something that you have to clarify. Yeah, okay, missing requirements are also kind of a tough one, because you have to build and show the people what's possible. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, cool, we can do it that way. Okay, then I come with my requirements. And so this is the first step that you have to take. Yeah, the agile, the new way of working that came with a startup company, and it takes a little while, and you have to take the people with you to not overwhelm them with that agile approach and the new technologies, all that stuff. So this is also, yeah, people have to learn the new technologies and speed of change. Of course, things are changing more rapidly, so you have to cope with that. But these are all things that you have to take care of. But also you get some benefits out of it. You can, if you have that centralized automation hub and data platform, you reduce for example, the data warehouse or the data lake itself. This is a central data platform for basically analytics or reportings. Before, we had 3 different systems where you could find out the information, and now we reduced it and centralized it so that we are not asking 3 different people for one KPI and you get 3 different answers. So this is a centralization thing, and reduces redundancy as well. And yeah, by knowing this big infrastructure and knowing what's possible and being able to implement fast automations, we increase the speed of implementation by a lot. Yeah. And also with new technology that comes into place, you're also able to create new use cases that weren't possible before. So this is also a benefit of new technology, but also if you have business requirements, you have to figure out how you can meet the expectations. All right, and yeah, I mean, we got by far faster. The implementation of having a central data platform and driving the data culture as well supports the reporting and assures the figures and the numbers that people are using, and you eliminate the gut feelings, because lots of people are saying, I know my customer, I don't need the numbers, I know how he's working, and all of a sudden when you show the numbers and you provide the numbers, then people think, "Ooh, well, okay, maybe you're right." And yeah, this is basically part of the data culture that we're benefiting from. Now, to wrap it all up, let me just give you the 4 things that you should take away. I love low code, and it's good for citizen developers, which is people that like technology but are not coders. They still can work with low code. So in that case, you might be able to onboard more people. You reduce all the manual activities so that people have time for the actual business and not for working on certain things. You really have to talk to the people and bring all the parties together when you want to build automations, because otherwise the automation won't work, and you're just building an automation in one direction, and it doesn't help you, because the way back is not really helping a lot. And in the end, don't stop automating, because even though we automated a lot right now, we still find things where we say, well, this is taking time, and just keep on automating. Automate the automation to wrap it all up. And this is my experience towards our success in automating our processes. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Patrick, to give your insights. I really love the use case and also the automation approach. It's so and especially what I like about it, as you said, it looks very easy on that picture with the lines, and because it's a very clean automation approach. Other companies that have automation initiatives, they are using many more tools and many more approaches, and then it gets much more complicated looking. For you, I will consider it as really, really clean and API first focused, what is also really important and a big advantage. Cool. And there is already 3 questions in the chat, so I can step in and do the moderation of the questions, really good ones. I also noted down some questions, so we can fill the time, the last 6-7 minutes, very useful. The first question came from Matthias Zivi, and Matthias is asking, do you think that it is also possible to build this kind of automation without a coding background, especially for low-code solutions?
As I said, I mean, you need to be a kind of a tech lover, or not really a tech lover, but you need to not be scared of technology, because I mean, you saw the screenshots that I put it there for the automation, and it's you just have to know the structure of the data, and they build a connection towards Salesforce. You get the credentials from the Salesforce admin, you put them in there, and then you have access to all the objects, and then you start automating yourself. And you have to get a little bit in there. You have to give yourself a little time to get familiar with the structure and the way things are done. But I mean, we had a ramp up phase and a learning curve that was so steep that I would say someone who's interested and who's willing to learn, no problem.
Cool. Yeah, and really important question, Matthias, that we face also really often in the real world. So who's able to build those kind of automations? And I can underline what you said, Patrick. So next question comes from Artem. Have you considered using a workflow engine to increase transparency of automated processes, especially the long-running ones? Also, so second question, do you have a standard process for communicating requirements?
Okay, the workflow engine, you have to consider that workflows are partly built into systems like Salesforce, for example. So there are flows that you can build. So there's also automation in that system. And our approach was mainly to connect the systems together and make the processes work between the systems. A complete workflow, meaning let's take the example employee onboarding. The first touch point is basically a website or an email or a phone call or something, and that's where the workflow starts. And this is not really, or we're not trying to focus on the complete workflow from the first touch point to the onboarding and hiring, or hiring and onboarding the person. So therefore, it depends how you define the workflow. I mean, we do have lots of flows and information going from one direction to the other. But you have to build we built ourselves a structure inside our integration tool and automation tool so that we have the transparency of the processes and know where goes what, because there is something called lineage. And lineage means, for example, if I have several steps in one process, and I don't really know which process I'm in right now, then I can see where is this process hooked up to the other one. And so I get a big picture with all the processes that I'm using, and I see which one is calling which one. And so this is basically some kind of a workflow as well. But this is the way how we use it. As I mentioned, not a complete workflow in terms of the business workflow, but the workflow of the information that is going there. So this towards the workflow. And the standardized communication, not really. To be honest, this is something where you can spend a lot of time standardizing things, but I mean, we're all business professionals, and we all know how to talk to people. And especially in that case, if you have a broad overview of all the possibilities and functions and options that you have, you go to the people, and you have to have actually a good feeling for their problems and their thoughts, their worries and their problems, and then try to find a solution. So it's not really standardized. It's just, from my opinion, common sense to get into interaction and communicate with the people. Then we use Jira to monitor all our tasks and things that we need to do, and try to document as well in combination with Confluence the process that we are building a concept for and how it's being implemented. So this is basically how we keep track on this complete process.
Cool. And there's one last question, Patrick, from Christoph, which is also an interesting one, maybe related also to the last one of Artem. Have you set up a central permission management system?
The fact is that we currently are 3 people that work with the integration platform, and we don't have a permission management right there because we're trying to be pretty transparent. And since we're only 3 people and do not have someone from marketing, someone from HR, from, I don't know, different departments, we're all working very close together and keep us up to date with things that we are working with. So thank goodness, to be honest, I did not really have to worry about a permission management right there. But it will come, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick, for the insights in your job in automation at Alexander Bürkle. So sorry again for this in the beginning. Yeah. And also for the really, really good questions from the audience. I noted down 10 or 12 questions really about organizational structure behind automation, how you plan to scale it in the future. Maybe we can have a chat and have a podcast episode to continue that. I would be really, really interested. And for all that participated, I will post in the chat the LinkedIn of Patrick. So if you want to connect, feel free. I will also post a link to our community that will start at Valentine's Day. So if you want to get shoot by the Automero, we call it, then please register here to have more of those kind of events. And yeah, then with that, I can only say thank you. It was a lot of fun, really cool case. Thank you again, Patrick. Thanks everyone, and happy automating. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.